After the second incident of Elokim Vakish Nirdaf, the Medrash goes on. Noach Nirdaf Mivnei Doro. Noach was pursued by the members of his generation. Noach Motzachein Bnei Hashem. V'Doro V'Yimach Kol Yikum. Noach was saved, and the whole generation was totally obliterated, was wiped out. So why did he survive the Mabul, the great flood? Elokim Yivakish Nirdaf. That was very interesting. The Gemara in Sanhedrin Chelek asks a question. We know that Rashi cites the Chazal a number of times during Makas Bechoros. Makas Bechoros was Midas Adin. The attribute of justice was in place at the time, and Hashem says to the Jews that they should not leave their homes. And when Hashem will see the blood on the lintel and the doorpost, he will skip over the homes of the Jews, and he will only take the firstborn of the Egyptians. And he will not allow the angel of death to affect the Jews negatively. So Rashi over there says, why? Because when Midas Adin is in place, it does not discern between tzaddik and Rosha. You cannot be perfect enough, even if you're a tzaddik, when the Midas Adin is in effect. Therefore, you have to stay in the location where the blood is on the lintel and the doorposts. So the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that during the Mabul, there were people with tzaddikim. But because Midas Adin was in place, it does not discern between tzaddik and Rosha. Therefore, even the tzaddikim perished during the time of the great flood. So the Gemara asks, so why did Noach survive? Because he says, because Motzachein Be Hashem. Noach Motzachein B'nei Hashem. Noach find favor in the eyes of Hashem. But the Gemara doesn't explain why. What was the basis for the chen, for the charm that he found in the eyes of Hashem? But based on this midrash, we're able to understand why was he Motzachein B'nei Hashem? Because Elokim Yivakish Nirdaf. Because Hashem favors the pursuit. And since Noach was pursued by the members of the generation, therefore, he had that special status, that special distinction, because he was a Nirdaf. But it's very interesting. Why was Noach a Nirdaf? Why was he pursued? Because he was given a task to build the Teva for 120 years, and that was the focal point of discussion. When people would say to Noach, what are you doing? He says, I'm building this Teva, this ark, which is going to be a refuge for all existence because Hashem will destroy the world unless you people change your behavior. So the people, they responded, they said to him, if Hashem is going to destroy the world, he's going to destroy you and your family. He's not going to destroy us. We'll be able to stand up against it. And if in fact we see you going into the Teva, we will kill you and your family and we'll destroy the Teva. This was something which was a dialogue that went on continuously between Noach and the members of the generation. So was Noach and Noach would respond. So Noach, all these years, was a Nirdaf. And because he was a Nirdaf, therefore, Motzachein B'nei Hashem. Now, so it comes out like this. If Hashem wouldn't have given Noach that task, to be this one to interact with the generation, or the generations during this 120-year period, what would have been? Noach would have been a tzaddik. Tzaddik koyi b'do rosov. He would have been a tzaddik, as it says in the Torah. He would have been tzaddik b'do rosov. And it's very good what Rashi says, yishdoshim l'shvach, yishdoshim l'gedai. Some, I interpret it positively and negatively. What's negatively? That if he would have been generation of Avram, he would have been considered ordinary. Those are the words of Chazal. He would have considered nothing compared to in Avram's generation, in terms of who Avram was. Why? What is it all about? Because in terms of tzaddik, he wouldn't have survived. Midas Adin, he wouldn't have been able to survive Midas Adin. But it's only because Hashem gave him the task to be the one to interact with the generation. So who put him in the setting of Nirdaf? Hashem made him into a Nirdaf, giving him that task that he has to deal with the generation, he turned Noach into a Nirdaf, into a pursuit. As a result of that, he was Motza Chen B'nei Hashem. Said it's really Dorsha L'Ganai. In terms of who he was, he wouldn't have survived the Mabul. Because compared to Avraham Avinu, he would have been considered nothing. So why did he survive? Motza Chen B'nei Hashem. But why was he Motza Chen B'nei Hashem? Because Hashem gave him the task to deal with the generation, to be in Nirdaf, so he should be able to survive. Okay? This is the second example. Let's talk about Avraham Avinu. The next person to be a Nirdaf, to be pursued, is Avraham Avinu. So it says over here, Avraham Nirdaf ne Nimrod. Avraham was pursued because of Nimrod. Nimrod was the one, the king, who had given him an ultimatum: either you bow to the idol or you go into the kiln. And what does it say? Atohu Hashem Elokim asher bocharta ba'Avraham. You are the Elokim who chose Avraham. V'otzeisum yukazdim. So who was the Nirdaf? Avraham was a Nirdaf, was pursued by Nimrod, as it says. And who put him into the Kazdim, into the kiln of Kazdim? That was Nimrod. And it says, Atu Hashem Elokim asher bocharta Avraham. You are the Hashem Elokim who chose him to be Avraham. Right? Initially he was Avraham. But because he went into the kiln, when he came out of the kiln, was he Avraham yet? He wasn't Avraham. He was Avram. He only became Avram at the age of 99. But why was he destined to become Avraham, who was going to be the founding father of the Jewish people, to be qualified to father Yitzchak? Because you chose him when he came out of the kiln. And why was he put into the kiln? He was put into the kiln because Nimrod gave him the ultimatum. So Nimrod caused Avram to be a Nirdaf. Okay? So why did Avram come out of the kiln? Because he was a Nirdaf. Now, I always had a question. We find, why was Avram thrown into the kiln? So the Midrash tells us that Avram's father was an idol maker, and Terach asked Avram to mind the store. His father leaves, and he takes an axe, and he smashes every idol in the shop, except the largest idol, and he puts the axe in the hands of the largest idol. His father comes in, places shambles, and his father says, Terach says to Avram, what happened? He says, somebody brought a gift to one of these idols, and they started a fight, and the larger idol destroyed all the other idols, and that's why he's holding the axe. So Avram says, his father says to him, are you kidding me? You smashed the idols. They're only stone and clay and whatever they are. How could they fight? So Avram says to his father, Father, do you hear what you're saying? They're only stone and clay. That's all they are. They have no value. So immediately he touched a very bad nerve in his father, and his father informed on his own son to Nimrod. My son did something, he deserves to be put to death. Comes before Nimrod, and Nimrod gives him the ultimatum. Either you bow or you go into the kiln. Avram goes into the kiln. So who informed on Avram? His own father. And then this whole story. Avram goes with his father. Vayikach Terach es Avram es Lot es Yisco. They still have a relationship. Until Avram leaves to go to Canaan, he has a relationship. What does he have a relationship? What's the reason? Now, why did Avram achieve the level of who he was going to be? Do you know why? Who put him in there? Who created that scenario? His father. Even though his father did something which is unconscionable, to give his son over. But factually, what was the fruits of that action? Avram became the one, because he went into the kiln, he became Avraham. That was the basis for him to become the founding father of the Jewish people, only because of his father. So the level of his father doesn't understand, but the level of Hakor Satov, because we're going to show in a moment, his father, he was able to achieve and address and be qualified to be the one to address the objective of creation was because his father gave him over to be killed, to be thrown, and he had the choice, and he chose not to go into the kiln. That was the ultimate being Nirdaf, to be the pursued by Nimrod. And therefore, it's B'chata B'Avraham. He became the Avamon Goyim. He became the Ramach. He was given the mitzvah of circumcision because of what happened that he went into the kiln, not to bow to the idol. Now, I asked the question, the Midrash says explicitly, why did Avram come out of the kiln? So the Midrash quotes a pasuk that Yaakov redeemed Avram. That's the reason why that's why he survived the kiln. Asher poda Yaakov es Avram. Yaakov redeemed Avram. What does that mean? It means this. Avram did something, he gave his life for Kiddush Hashem. He was a Ben Noach. A Ben Noach has no obligation of Kiddush Hashem. But despite that, he gave his life. He, rather than bow to the idol, he went into the kiln. In terms of his level of achievement, what did he have to survive it? He gave his life for Hashem. Let him go straight to Olam Haba. Let him be put in the world to come. Why did Hashem have him survive? You know why? That since there had to be a Yaakov, who ultimately would father the 12 tribes, so if Avraham would have perished in the kiln, there wouldn't be a Yaakov. So Yaakov redeemed Avraham from the kiln. The only reason why he survived the kiln and Hashem performed the miracle that he should come out was because there had to be a Yaakov. And here it says, why did he come out of the kiln? Why did Hashem save him from the kiln? Because he was a Nirdaf. Because he was pursued. You know what the answer is? Why did he merit to be the Avamon Goyim, to be the grandfather of Yaakov? And therefore Yaakov redeemed him from the kiln. Because he was a Nirdaf. Because he was a Nirdaf, that's why he had a grandson Avram. He merited to be the grandfather of Yaakov was because he was a Nirdaf. And that's what it's saying. Atoh Hashem el Kibshor, it says as Avram you were Kazdim. You took Avram v'samte shema Avraham. Because you took him out of your Kazdim, he became Avraham. But why did he go into the Ur Kazdim? Because he was a Nirdaf. So the reason why he merited to have Yaakov Avinu to be chosen to be the founding father of the Jewish people was because he was a Nirdaf. So what level of Hakor Satov does Avram have to his father Terach? Rashi cites Chazal that ultimately Terach did tshuva. He did tshuva. Now the question is, a man like that, and initially the Medrash says, and the Maral has a lengthy discussion on this, where do we find situations where you can extract light from darkness? The only way to take light out of darkness is what? Is Hashem. Extract light from darkness. What is an example of light from darkness? Or ben achoshech, Avrami Terach. Avrami Terach is what? Is or ben achoshech. Because Terach was choshech. He had nothing going for him. You hear this? Terach had no merit on his own. No merit on his own. And yet he had an Avram Avinu who brought light to the world. He gave the world, as Gemara says in Brachos, he was the first one to acknowledge his Hashem as Adni, as the master of the universe. So that's an example of Or Min HaChoshech, light from darkness. But yet it says, Terach ultimately did tshuva. Because Hashem said to Avram that he will go to his forefathers. So Rashi cites Chazal, but Terach was a Russia. Mikan, from here we see that Terach did tshuva. But if he's Choshech, how did he do tshuva? Avram was Omer, how did he do tshuva? You know why he did tshuva? He did tshuva in the merit that he had in Avram. Because Avram was the one who brought light to the world. and went into the Ur Kasdim and chose to go in, he merited to be the grandfather of Yaakov. But why did he go into the kiln? Because Terach created the setting that Nimrod should be the pursuer of Avram. Therefore, Terach, although he's Choshech, he merited to do tshuva because Avram was the Ormin HaChoshech. Something phenomenal. Because we see the same thing. We find another example of a pursued and pursuer is Moshe be Paro. After Moshe killed the Egyptian, Moshe had to flee from Egypt. So who was Moshe's pursuer? Moshe's pursuer was Paro. And it cites a pasuk that at the time of the Chet Egel, when Hashem wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael, why did Hashem accept the supplications of Moshe? Not to destroy us? Because he was a Nirdaf. Because he was pursued by Paro. Therefore, ultimately, he was worthy, his tefillah was worthy that Hashem should value his tefillah not to destroy Klal Yisrael. Could you imagine? So if Moshe would not have been a Nirdaf from Paro, Chas v'sholom, what would have been? His tefillah wouldn't have had value to be able to annul the decree that the Jewish people should be destroyed at the time of the Chet Egel. So because Paro, he merited to rise to a level of relation with Hashem that Elokim Yivakish Nirdaf, therefore he valued his tefillah that Klal Yisrael should not be destroyed. That's going to be an example of this. Now, who informed on Moshe when he killed the Egyptian? Dosan Aviram. They informed on it. They were bad people. Could you imagine? The only advocate Klal Yisrael have in the palace is the adopted grandson of Paro, who's Moshe, whose daughter took him out of the Nile. And these people go and inform on him. They're bad people. When Moshe is 80 years old and he's shepherding the flock of his father-in-law and he sees the burning bush, what does Hashem say to Moshe? Return to be the Goel because Mesu Anoshim. Because the people originally informed on you, they're no longer alive. So the Gemara tells us in the Dorim, what do you mean they're no longer alive? Das Naviram, they remained alive till the story of Korach, where they were swallowed up by the earth. So what do you mean, Mesa Noshim? So Gemara says, from here we learn, Ani Choshev Kimes, that initially they were only able to inform on him because they were from the wealthy class, although they were slaves, and therefore they had relationships in the upper echelons of the government, therefore they were able to inform on him. But now that they had their reversal, they become poor, they had their wings clipped, you have nothing to worry about. Mesu Anoshim. From here we learn Ani Choshev Kimes. So the obvious question is, what they did, they deserve to die. They did something unconscionable. And later they continue making tzaros to Moshe Rabbeinu. And according to Rachaim, they even instigated the story with Korach. Rather than causing them to become impoverished, Hashem should have taken their lives. Why did he allow them to live? What schus did they have? So the way I understand it, and Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came back, and he took the Jews out of Egypt, what was Moshe's halachic status? His halachic status, the Gemara says in Shuas, he was a melech. If you defy the order of a king, he has the right to put you to death. Moshe Rabbeinu tolerated the misbehavior of Dasan Viram until finally they were swallowed up. Why? Do you know why? Even though they informed on them, they did something unconscionable. But why did Moshe rise to a level that his tefillah has the value that he could annul the decree to destroy the Klal Yisrael? You know why? Because he was a Nirdaf. Because he was pursued. And who put him in a position to be a Nirdaf? Doesn't have Aviram. And Moshe's takeaway was, Hashem could have taken the lives of Dosan Aviram. But what did he do? He only clipped their wings. Why? You know what the answer is? Because Moshe Rabbeinu only became who he was because he was a Nirdaf. And that was due to Dosan Aviram informing of him. That was Moshe's takeaway why Hashem did not take their lives, but he only gave them the financial reversals. That was the confirmation that everything that he became is due to them, regardless of what their intent was. It doesn't make a difference. But ultimately, that's why he kept him alive. And although they defied him many times, he did not take them out, which halachically he was permitted to, because he was a melech. Because that was the Koras HaTov he had to them, because he appreciated what the end result was. It doesn't make a difference. Something phenomenal. Finally, the last one, who is the ultimate Nirdafim? Yisrael bein umas olam. The world pursues us. We are pursued by the world. And therefore, Hashem chose us. The Medrash concludes. Yisrael Nirdafim ne umas olam. And what does it say in the Pasuk? Ubecha bocher Hashem alokecha. Because we are Nirdafim, we are pursued by the nations of the world. Therefore, B'cha bocher Hashem. Therefore, Hashem chose us. You want to know something? What's going on right now? The world, at one time, you say it was the Nazi Germany. Today, the Jewish people globally are Nirdafim. When Nirdafim simultaneously, one time it was one particular civilization. It was the Romans, it was the Babylonians, it was the Greeks, it was whatever it is. Today, we're Nirdafim from every sector of existence, at every level of society, the governmental society, the citizenry, wherever it is. So say, what's going to be? You know what the answer is? As the Mishnah says in Sota, Elon Lishon Elovinu Shebashamayim. When you come to that level, you're the ultimate Nirdafim. And if you're in Nirdafim, you've pursued, what does it say? What does Shlomo Melech say? Elokim yivakish Nirdaf. We get a favorite status. And because we have the favorite status, ultimately, it will only produce the best. That's how you have to read the script. But I haven't explained yet why Elokim yivakish Nirdaf. It's not because he favors the underdog. And it concludes, why did Hashem choose the ox, the sheep, and the goat to be these species? Because each of them is pursued by a certain predator animal. The ox is pursued by the lion. The sheep is pursued by the wolf. And the goat is pursued by the mountain lion. Therefore, these are the species, because Kimi Vakish Nirdov, he chose these species. Because then they're Dovim. So let's understand now, why does Hashem favor the Nirdaf, the pursuit? So the way I understand it has nothing to be favoring an underdog, but rather the way there was a book written by a chaplain. He wasn't a Jewish chaplain during World War II. The book is named "There Are No Atheists in the Foxhole." Famous book. Never read it, but it's a known book. It was written. You know what the answer is? When a person is in that foxhole, it's irrelevant what kind of education. It's irrelevant who you know and how you connected. When you're in the foxhole, only one thing makes a difference. Are you going to survive it or not? And that's up to God whether you're going to survive it or not. That circumstance puts a person in a understanding, not abstract, but reality, that he can internalize the reality that if God doesn't intervene, he's not going to continue to be alive. So because you come to that realization where every route of escape or every suggestion to survive is taken away, a person has the ability to come to a level of understanding, to connect to Hashem at a level which is one of a kind of a level. When you're pursued, and because the person comes to that level of understanding, therefore, Elokim Yivakish Nirdaf. That's why God favors the pursuit, because the pursuit in that state has come to that level of realization and internalization that everything is Hashem. That's what this is all about. That's why Elokim Yivakish Nirdaf. The dynamic of Esav, son of Yaakov, is the dynamic. Yaakov is the pursuit. Because if he doesn't keep going, what is a pursuit? If you can't outrun the pursuer, it's over. Yaakov has to be so invested in a kol Yaakov, only then he survives the Yidai Midei Esav. Because the Medrash says, when is it Yidai Midei Esav? If the kol is not kol Yaakov. If Yaakov doesn't produce qualitatively the kol to be kol Yaakov, then it's Yidai Midei Esav. So that means Yaakov has to continuously outpace Esav. He doesn't outpace him. God chas v'sholom. Esav grabs him and he crushes him. So we're pursued, continuously pursued. From that moment till the end of existence, Klal Yisrael pursued. It's Esav son of Yaakov. We're always in a pursuit state. And unless we continuously fortify ourselves, it's over. But the reason why it's not over, because Hashem promised, gave us a guarantee, the Jewish people are eternal, they will never be totally destroyed. But casualties, throughout history, we've had many, many casualties. Because the kol was not called Yaakov as it should have been.
Well, why wasn't the incident of broadcasting recorded in the Torah if it was so vital a concept?
Yeah. I mean, it's a question regardless how I explain this. You asked a question on the Medrash. If Elokim Yivakish Nirdaf, which established Avram to be the founding father of Klal Yisrael, it should have explained what the custom is. Rashi says it's alluding to the story that Terach had informed on his son that he broke the idols and therefore he was given the ultimatum. Okay, Ramban asks that question, and the Ramban says to be able to appreciate that, the Torah would have to flesh out the whole story of Ur-Kasdim, the level of idolatry that was there. The Torah doesn't want to expose us to certain facts because studying or being exposed to understand what idolatry is, it could have a negative consequence on us. The Torah doesn't want to talk about that. You know, the Torah speaks about Baal Peor. Baal Peor, it doesn't get into the details. The Gemara in Sanhedrin speaks about what Baal Peor was in terms of the women coming out and how they seduced the men and what it was and how they defecated on the idol. Torah doesn't in the text doesn't explain what this is, what the Baal Peor was. It's so inappropriate. It's something which is so vile. Torah doesn't discuss that. That's already that's Torah Baal Peh. You got to read the footnotes, which aren't even recorded. That's all oral. That's the Ramban. The Ramban writes that it says Kol Niskolim. Person who's put to death by stoning, his remains have to be displayed until nightfall, right? Not beyond nightfall. So Ramban says, why? Why does it have to be? So the Gemara says they would take the person, hang him up, after he was stoned. They would hang up his remains, display them right before Shkia, and take it out immediately. Why? Because the curse of God is displayed. So Rashi over there says, Moshel Ma'adav. This is Rashi with the Midrash. You have two brothers who are identical twins. One is the king, and one is became a notorious bandit, gangster. And the gangster there was a price, a bounty, that whoever finds him, get it, and he'll be put to death. And they take the gangster who looks exactly like the king, kill him, and they hang him up. What do people say when they see the gangster hanging there? They say the king is hanging there. So since the person was created B'Tselem Elokim, our profile reflects Hashem. So keeping our remains displayed too long, you're disgracing Hashem. Because the person is Tselem Elokim. That's Rashi, cites the Chazal. The Ramban over there writes, when do people start compromising on law? If there's lawlessness, meaning like this, if nobody steals and there's a law you're not permitted to steal, people have an appreciation and it could internalize the wrongness of stealing. What about if society is corrupt, everybody's stealing, everybody's dishonest? Automatically, although conceptually speaking, you understand it's wrong, but what's the impact on society? If it's not enforced, it's not, people are not reined in, people are going to become dishonest, people are going to steal. If you're exposed to misbehavior or to criminal behavior, ultimately it'll affect you negatively. So to see a person who's put to death because he violated a law and they dealt with him so extremely, and you see it too long, ultimately it'll minimize the effect of it. Therefore, you take it down immediately. That's the Ramban. Some say it's similar. Or Kasdim is kept under wraps. Hashem doesn't want to get into the details of what Kasdim, the idol, what it was, what. It's alluded to. The kill of Kasdim, what does it have to kill? It says Avram left Ur Kasdim to go to Canaan. What's Ur Kasdim? So the Torah Shabbat Peh says what it was. The story with the idol, it smashed it, his father informed them, and so on and so forth. This Chazal, which we're talking about now, Elokim Vakshut, is such a fundamental, so many things are able to be understood from this. So therefore Hashem chose these three species. Shar Keseves, because each one of these species are pursued by a predator animal. The lion pursues the ox, the wolf pursues the sheep, and the mountain lion pursues the goat. But if the way we're explaining it is, the reason why Elokim Vakshut Nirdaf is because the person comes to a level of realization. What does that do with an unintelligible creature? The sheep, the goat, the ox, they're unintelligible. It has nothing to do with, you've come to levels of realization. So why did Hashem? Because they happen to be pursued, therefore Hashem chose them. Because Hashem favors the pursued. So it's more like saying, Hashem favors the underdog. Why? Regardless of what the underdog is, because he's an underdog, he favors it. It has nothing to do with coming to realization. So the way I understand it is this. The Ramban writes, when a person brings a korban, what does he have to have in mind? Based on Midas Adin, the person deserves to be slaughtered, his blood sprinkled, and he should be burnt. Midas HaRachmim says, the attribute of mercy says, korban LaHashem, that if you do tshuva, Hashem is willing to take the animal in your stead. So the person, when he brings the korban, he does the smicha, he leans on it, and he does tshuva. What he has to have in mind, that in reality, the realization is appreciating the wrongness of what he did. This is what's happening here. He deserves that. So therefore, the animal is a representation of who he is. What level of realization does he come to? Elokim Vakshut Nirdaf. Everything is Hashem. So therefore, because that's the realization you're supposed to come to, and that's why the korban atones, therefore the representation of that korban has to be the Nirdaf, which is the person, because that person in the state of being pursued comes to that level of realization. That's why it's specifically these three species. With this, I explained. It's very interesting. We had read in the previous parsha, there's a provision called Shchutei Chutz. If you take an animal that was consecrated, brought to the Mizbeach, and you slaughter it outside the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan, what is the liability? Liability is koris. Why? And the Torah says, because when you kill the animal, it's like you killed a human being. You hear this? Like you killed a human being. You shed blood. What do you mean? If the animal's not consecrated, you didn't shed blood. But because it was consecrated to be brought as a korban, when you slaughter it outside the Beis HaMikdash or outside the Mishkan, it's like you committed murder. How is it committing murder? You know what the answer is? We had said, when a person brings a korban, consecrates it, what does that korban represent? It represents himself. And when he goes and he leans on the korban, the level of liability and culpability, which is that impurity, transfers from him onto the korban. So that korban is him. And his only chance of survival is if that korban is brought on the Mizbeach. So if you take that korban, which is the lifeline of the person, and you slaughter it outside the Beis HaMikdash, what are you doing? You've taken away this person's connection to eternity. Because that's the Midas HaRachman says, that animal represents the person. Because the sin, which is the basis to terminate him, it's transferred onto the animal. It's meant to, the only way he's reinstated is when an animal is brought on the Mizbeach. So when you go and slaughter it outside of the Mishkan and you invalidate it, as a result of that, what have you done? You've taken the life of the person. Therefore, it's considered the equivalent of bloodshed. But an ordinary animal, which doesn't represent the person, is unrelated to his spiritual state. You can slaughter an animal wherever you want to slaughter it. It doesn't have any level of liability to the one who slaughters it. It's exactly this. These species are Nirdafim. The person, to be able to achieve atonement through this korban, he has to come to that level of realization. The Gemara says, Zevach Risham Toveva. For a person who is a korban, doesn't do tshuva, it's considered an abomination. It only has that value only if you do tshuva, only if you come to that level of realization.